Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into a pretty complex topic today. It's about societal norms and parental expectations,
Yeah.
and specifically how they can impact people who are neurodivergent or gender diverse.
Mm.
It's like all those unspoken rules about who we should be and how we should live our lives.
Right, exactly.
So to guide us through this deep dive, we're going to be looking at an article by Dr. Jaime Hoerricks,
Okay.
it's called, and get ready for this title. Breaking the Narrative: How Parental Expectations Turn Neurodiversity and Gender Diversity into Problems.
Interesting.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
It really makes you think.
It does, yeah.
One of the things Dr. Hoerricks talks about is this idea of narrative loss.
Okay.
And it really struck a chord with me.
Mm.
So imagine, you always pictured your kid maybe going to college, getting married,
Yeah.
having a family that looks a certain way,
Mhm.
and then your child comes along.
Right.
And maybe they follow a different path. Maybe they're neurodivergent, maybe they're gender diverse, and suddenly that picture,
Yeah.
it doesn't quite fit anymore.
It shifts, yeah.
Yeah, and that feeling of grief, maybe even confusion for the parents,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Hoerricks calls that narrative loss.
I see.
And it can be a really, really powerful emotion.
It makes sense, though, doesn't it? When
Yeah.
you think about it. It does. I mean, those expectations are often so deeply ingrained.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like society kind of hands us this script,
Totally.
and we're expected to follow it.
Yeah, and when something disrupts that script,
Right.
it can be jarring.
Exactly. Exactly.
And we also have to acknowledge, the societal pressures that parents are facing.
Oh, yeah.
It's like everyone has an opinion on how you should raise your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this whole culture of comparison, like accessory parenting, where it's almost like kids become these status symbols.
Like trophies almost.
Yeah, proof that you're a successful parent.
Right. Right.
I mean, think about how many people name their first son Junior.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, whoa, that's a lot to live up to.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and Dr. Hoerricks ties this into the idea of Christian nationalism.
Okay, how so?
Well, this ideology, with its emphasis on traditional family structures,
Right.
it really plays a role in shaping these expectations.
I can see that.
It's like, those old-fashioned storybooks?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Everything perfectly in its place.
The mom baking cookies, the dad mowing the lawn.
Exactly, and the kids are all playing nicely in the backyard.
It's very Leave It to Beaver, very picturesque.
Totally, and it's like there's this unspoken rule
Right.
that anything outside of that picture-perfect family,
Mm-hmm.
it's seen as a problem that needs to be fixed.
Like it's a deviation from the norm.
Exactly.
And that's where I think things get really tricky.
It's like there's this pressure to conform,
There is, yeah.
to fit into this very specific mold. And if you don't, well, you're kind of seen as the outlier.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing that Dr. Hoerricks brings up that's kind of heavy is this idea of Calvinism.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's a bit deep, but stick with me here.
I'm listening.
So Dr. Hoerricks draws a parallel between, certain Calvinist doctrines of control and submission
Okay.
and this societal pressure to, correct or manage neurodivergence and gender diversity. It's like this historical echo of trying to control or categorize people,
Right.
even when it comes to things like neurodiversity and gender identity.
And it makes you wonder, where does that impulse come from?
Yeah, it really does.
It's like this deep-seated fear of anything that's different.
And it's almost like as a society, we've inherited this kind of framework.
A framework of control, yeah.
Yeah, without even realizing it.
It's pretty wild when you think about it that way.
It is, and it makes you think about, eugenics.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That idea of eliminating certain traits for some idea of purity.
It's like, are we really still grappling with this?
It's disturbing, right? And what's even more disturbing is that, statistically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
trans individuals and autistic individuals,
Yeah,
they actually make up a really small percentage of the population.
that's a good point.
But you wouldn't know it from how much they're talked about in the media and politics.
It's like they're this huge looming presence.
Right. Like they're taking over the world or something.
It's blown out of proportion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by focusing so much attention on these relatively small groups
Mm-hmm.
as the problem,
Right.
we're missing the bigger picture, aren't we?
We are. We're losing sight of the real systemic issues.
The things that actually impact everyone.
Yeah, regardless of neurodiversity or gender identity.
Okay, so we've talked about parental expectations, societal norms, historical echoes,
Mm-hmm. A lot to unpack.
and even a little bit about how the media portrays certain groups.
It's complex, for sure.
So where do we go from here? What's next in this deep dive?
Well, next, we'll explore how neurodiversity and gender diversity can actually be seen as disruptors.
Ooh, okay, I'm intrigued.
Not in a bad way, though. Not in a negative way.
I was gonna say.
More like they challenge our assumptions
Okay.
and they force us to think differently.
That's a good thing, right?
I think so, yeah.
Challenging those assumptions.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be a really powerful catalyst for growth and change.
All right, so let's dive into that.
Let's do it. These identities, like neurodiversity and gender diversity, they kind of shake things up.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean.
They disrupt, but not in a bad way, not causing trouble or anything.
Right.
But it's more like they challenge those norms we were talking about.
So they disrupt the narrative, not like causing chaos.
Exactly. Like trans individuals, they challenge the idea that gender is just two boxes fixed, and that's it.
Okay.
And autistic individuals, they often question those social rules, the scripts that many people just accept without thinking.
Oh, yeah, the unwritten rules.
Yeah, exactly. And that's powerful.
It is, yeah.
Because it makes us think, hold on, maybe there isn't just one right way to be.
Like they're showing us there are other ways to do things, other ways to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that can be really uncomfortable for some people.
I bet.
Because it challenges their whole worldview.
It makes them question everything they thought they knew.
Right. And I think that's why there's so much pushback,
Against people who are different.
Yeah, like a fear of the unknown.
Makes sense. People fear what they don't understand.
Totally. And Dr. Hoerricks makes this point about adjustments,
Oh, yeah, I remember this part.
It's like to make society more inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
The changes aren't actually that huge or difficult.
That surprised me.
Me too.
Yeah.
Like sensory-friendly spaces.
Oh, good example.
Gender-neutral bathrooms.
Right.
Things that just make life easier.
Yeah. And those changes, they often help everyone.
Absolutely. Not just those specific groups.
It's like universal design.
Yes.
Exactly.
Making things accessible for people with disabilities.
Right. It often ends up making things better for everyone.
Ramps instead of stairs are a classic example.
Makes it easier to push a stroller, carry groceries.
So true. But sometimes, even these simple changes,
Yeah.
they can be met with resistance.
Why is that? It seems so obvious.
Right. Well, Dr. Hoerricks points out,
Yeah.
some people see it as a threat, like to the existing power structures.
Oh, interesting.
Or even just a threat to the way things have always been done.
Clinging to the familiar, even if it's excluding others.
Yeah, exactly.
But how does power come into it?
Well, it's tied to how we think about value and worth, right?
Okay.
We talked about capitalism before, remember?
I do.
And I think it's relevant here, too.
Oh.
Capitalism prioritizes profit, efficiency, over individual well-being.
It's at the bottom line is all that matters.
Sadly. Yeah.
Yeah, so if everything is about being cheap and fast,
Right.
accommodating different needs just seems like an inconvenience.
It gets seen as a burden.
And that loops back to the Calvinist work ethic.
Right, you got it.
Yeah.
That idea that personal responsibility is more important than collective care.
So we've got these norms,
Yeah.
historical echoes,
Yeah.
economic systems, all kind of tangled up.
It's a lot, right?
Uh-huh.
But understanding these connections
Yeah.
is crucial if we want to change things.
And speaking of change, Dr. Hoerricks talks about this whole global concern narrative.
Oh, yeah.
It's about autism and gender diversity.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really interesting critique.
It is.
It's like, are we really making these things out to be global crises?
It does feel like that sometimes, right?
It does.
And when we frame them that way,
Yeah.
we end up blaming individuals
Oh, I see.
instead of looking at the systems that create these barriers.
It's like saying these people are the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of what's wrong with the system.
Yes. So we need to shift the focus.
From fixing individuals to fixing the system.
You got it. Creating a world that's fairer for everyone.
That's a big shift.
It is. But it starts with how we think about families, parenthood.
Those expectations we were talking about before.
Right, exactly.
So instead of trying to fit everyone into these boxes,
yeah,
we need to build a world where the boxes don't even exist.
I love that. Diversity isn't the problem, it's a strength.
So true. Okay, I'm with you on that. But
Yeah.
how do we actually make that happen?
It's not magic, but there are concrete steps we can take.
Okay, I'm listening.
Dr. Hoerricks emphasizes moving beyond parental expectations,
Okay.
realizing children are individuals.
Not just extensions of their parents.
Exactly. They have their own journeys.
Give them space to figure out who they are.
Right. without feeling like they have to live up to someone else's dreams.
This makes me think of chosen families.
Oh, such an important concept.
Especially for folks who don't have support from their biological families.
It's about finding your own community, people who get you.
Without judgment.
Exactly. Chosen families can be vital.
Yeah, it's not about saying biological families are bad. It's recognizing that family can be different things.
And sometimes you need to create your own.
To find that love and acceptance.
Absolutely. Prioritize well-being. Surround yourself with support.
Okay, so community is key. And Dr. Hoerricks also says we need to empower marginalized voices.
Oh, absolutely. Can't talk about inclusion without listening to those most affected.
It makes sense. We can't create solutions without understanding their experiences.
Right. We need their expertise, their insights.
To guide us.
Exactly. Amplify those voices. Make space for them to share their stories.
And are we really listening?
That's the key question. Not just nodding along, but actually letting those voices shape our actions.
That's a challenge.
It is. It's about moving beyond performative allyship to genuine understanding and action.
We all have biases. We all have blind spots.
Of course, it's part of being human.
It's okay not to know everything.
It is. Being open to learning, being challenged.
I've learned so much from this deep dive.
Me too. And that willingness to learn, to grow.
It's essential for creating a more inclusive world.
It's an ongoing journey, not a one-time fix.
We all have a role to play.
We do. We can't just sit back and wait for someone else to do the work.
It's a collective effort.
Exactly. And it's not just about doing the right thing.
Right.
It's realizing that diversity makes us stronger, more creative, more resilient.
Everyone benefits when everyone can thrive.
I love that. So to wrap up this part, what's one thing our listeners can take away about how neurodiversity and gender diversity challenge those norms?
Big takeaways.
I think the biggest one is that change starts with us.
With each of us.
Yes. We can't just wait for someone else to make the world better.
We have to examine our own biases.
Educate ourselves. Take action.
And remember that even small acts of kindness, understanding,
They can make a difference.
it all adds up.
It does, creating a more inclusive world for everyone.
So before we go to the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I have a question for our listeners.
So go for it.
While you've been listening, what stood out to you?
What sparked your curiosity?
What are you still thinking about?
Hold on to those thoughts.
We'll come back to them in the next part of our deep dive. All right, deep divers, welcome back. I hope you had some time to think about what we were talking about.
Yeah, definitely a lot to process.
It is, right? All those societal norms, expectations, and how neurodiversity and gender diversity can challenge them.
It really makes you think.
We talked about sensory-friendly spaces, gender-neutral bathrooms, and how those small changes can benefit everyone.
They can. It's about creating a world where everyone feels welcome, valued,
Yeah, exactly.
seen for who they truly are.
So we know we want a more inclusive world,
Right.
but how do we actually get there? Where do we even start?
Well, Dr. Hoerricks has some practical advice.
Okay, good. I like practical.
It starts with us looking at our own biases.
Oh, yeah, that's always tough.
It is, but we all have them.
Sure.
It's part of being human.
So we need to be honest with ourselves?
Yeah, about how we might be contributing to those harmful narratives.
Even if we don't realize it.
Exactly.
And then we can start to challenge those narratives.
Yes. When we see them happening.
In conversations, in the media, even in politics.
It's about speaking up, educating ourselves, supporting those doing the work.
So taking action, not just talking about it.
Right. Donating to an LGBTQ+ center, volunteering for an organization that supports autistic people.
Having those tough conversations with family members who might have outdated views.
Yeah, exactly. Using our voices, our resources.
To amplify the voices of those who've been marginalized.
And advocating for change.
It's a lot, though.
It is, and we're not going to be perfect at it.
Right.
We'll make mistakes.
But we keep learning, keep growing.
Keep showing up for each other.
It's about working together.
It is. Building a more inclusive world, one step at a time.
And it's not just about doing the right thing.
No, it's about understanding that diversity makes us stronger.
More creative, more resilient.
Everyone benefits when everyone can thrive.
Okay, I love that takeaway.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with one final thought, something to think about.
Okay, I'm ready.
How can you, in your own way, contribute to a world that values neurodiversity and gender diversity?
What small step can you take today to make a difference?
Maybe it's reaching out to a friend who's neurodivergent or gender diverse and asking how to be a better ally.
Or educating yourself.
Or just be more mindful of the language you use.
Because those small actions, they can create a ripple effect.
They can, leading to a more just, equitable world for everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, folks. Until next time.